Okay, so everyone makes errors, right? Everyone makes an error because we are all human. So actually, it's natural to make an error when you speak. If you watched these videos, the raw footage or the recordings of all of these videos, you would see a lot of different errors. But because I'm recording, I can edit or I can delete the errors that I make. Okay, but in conversation, it's normal, and a lot of times native speakers make errors when they are talking. Okay, so take a look at this lesson about how to prevent errors, and also how many errors are you allowed to make on the IELTS exam. How many errors do you think you can make and still receive a 9? What do you think? Take a look. Okay, so like I said, we all make mistakes. This is a natural part of being human. So you are allowed to make mistakes on the IELTS exam. You can make mistakes and still receive a 9. Can you believe that? This is because even native speakers make errors during speech and natural conversation. Okay, so and depending on the band score you are aiming for, you may be allowed to make more errors than you think. Okay, so let's take a look at the IELTS speaking band score descriptors. This is the public version from the British Council IDP in Cambridge. You can find it on the link below in this YouTube video. Okay, so let's look at band score 9. Like I mentioned, you can make some mistakes to score a 9 still. Okay, so it's actually natural for native speakers to make mistakes, and it's part of the band score 9 under lexical resource. They call it slips. So this is just a simple mistake in our speech. A lot of times native speakers have these types of mistakes and they just correct themselves, or sometimes you might just continue talking. Okay, so it is possible to score a 9 and still make some mistakes. Okay, so let's look at band score 8. Here we have speaks fluently with only occasional repetition or self-correction. Okay, so you are allowed to correct your mistakes with a band score 8. Hesitation is usually content related, only rarely to search for language. So that's not about making mistakes, but searching for language. So let's move on to band score 8 under lexical resource. Okay, uses less common and idiomatic vocabulary skillfully with occasional inaccuracies. So occasional inaccuracies, it is possible to use some words inappropriately and still receive an 8. So lexical resource produces a majority of error-free sentences. So majority is not all. You can still make some mistakes in your sentences with only very occasional inappropriacies or basic non-systematic errors. So these are very occasional, so very rare that you make some small mistakes. Okay, and then let's look at pronunciation with only occasional lapses. This means every once in a while you make some mistakes with your pronunciation. And maybe you need to correct your pronunciation as you speak the word and restate the word again. Okay, so let's look at band score 7. So we have here again, has some repetition and or self-correction. So again, you are allowed to self-correct maybe a little bit more in band score 7 than you can in 8. And then for here, has some awareness of style and collocation with some inappropriate choices. So you have maybe some word choices that are not appropriate. That's okay for a 7. Again, here we have frequently produces error-free sentences, though some grammatical mistakes persist. So here you might have a few more mistakes than you would for an 8. Okay, and then pronunciation. So this says all the same as 6, but not all of 8. So we'll look down at 6. So 6 is willing to speak at length, though may lose coherence at times due to repetition, self-correction, or hesitation. So you probably have a even bit more self-correction or repetition than 7. Okay, next, so we have lexical resource, your vocabulary. In spite of inappropriacies. So it's almost expected that you make some mistakes with word choice or using vocabulary to score a 6. Okay, for lexical resource, may make frequent mistakes with complex structures. So if you use some more complex language, frequent mistakes are expected for a 6, okay? Though these rarely cause comprehension problems. So you might make a lot of mistakes with complex sentence structures, but you should still be able to communicate your idea clearly. The examiner should be able to understand your idea. Okay, and then finally, let's look at pronunciation for 6. Shows some effective use of features, but this is not sustained. So you might be able to use some effective uses of the pronunciation. Can be generally understood throughout, though mispronunciation of individual words or sounds reduces clarity at times. So for a 6, you might have a few words that the examiner cannot understand because of your pronunciation. So if you need a 6, it's okay for pronunciation, but I would really focus on learning how to pronounce your words clearly and speaking clearly. Okay, and I don't want to look at the 4 and 5 because a lot of students that I have usually want to score higher than this, but if you want to, you can pause the video and take a look at these as well. Okay, so also remember, of course, if you make less mistakes, the better you will score. Okay, so remember that. You should continue to work and continue to practice. Be sure to work on the things you know you can improve. Okay, so obviously the less mistakes you make, the better. We saw that with a band score 7 and a band score 8. The difference between the 7 and the 8 is the amount of mistakes. Again, that's one of the key differences. And then a 9. For a 9, you almost need no mistakes, just a couple slips, as we say, a couple small mistakes that are natural. So it might be difficult to score 9 for some students because you need almost no mistakes. But again, for a 6 and 7, mistakes are acceptable, and almost they are expected for a 6. Okay, so it's almost expected to make some frequent mistakes to score a 6. Okay, so again, keep practicing because the less mistakes you make, the better your score. Okay, now that we talked about making mistakes and how many you can make for the IELTS exam, let's talk about how to prevent errors. So take your time with the exam. There's no need to talk fast or rush through your answers. This does not give you a better score. The faster you talk, the better score you get. This is not true. So use strategies to buy time, meaning give you more time to think of your answer. So here's an example. If you need time to think, let the examiner know. Say, wow, I have never thought about that before. Let me see. Well, I think that, and then you can answer the question. This is very natural. You can also use some ums. It's fine. Just not too many because it may get in the way of comprehension and understanding and the logic of your speaking. So notice how much time you have to think of an answer when you use this technique. You can also use this to organize your thoughts before you speak. Maybe you know your answer, but you want some more time to think. You can use this strategy and then think about your answer. Also, pauses are okay and actually very common when speaking English. So it's important to pause at the appropriate times, though, and not pausing when you're trying to think of a word to say. Okay, so a pause is good in the right place. Okay, so this is how to prevent some errors, and we went over some band scores and what amount of mistakes you are allowed to make. So look at that. You're allowed to make errors on the IELTS exam. Okay, so you can make errors and still maybe receive the score you want. Okay, so obviously, the less errors you make, the better your score. Okay, so if you have any questions, again, please, you can email me And please like and share the video, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.